No one imagined that a simple handmade dress could change a young woman's destiny forever. In that quiet neighborhood where the houses were lined up and the trees cast long shadows on the sidewalks, no one suspected that something so small could shake hearts, change perspectives, and awaken passions. Clara, at 16, walked through the school hallways as if crossing a minefield, each step carrying the weight of glances that judged her before even knowing her. The girl wasn't famous. She didn't excel in sports or at parties. She was discreet, almost invisible, but she carried with her a silent treasure, her grandmother's love and talent sewn into every thread of her clothes. Every stitch of that dress hid stories no one could have imagined. Stories of cold nights illuminated by a dim lamp, wrinkled hands working tirelessly, old dreams being transformed into fabrics, buttons, and colorful threads. It was pure, patient, and silent love, a legacy passed down from generation to generation, and Clara carried this legacy with her, unaware that it would lead her on a path to a completely unexpected destiny. At school, however, no one saw the love. No one saw the dedication. To her classmates, it was simply different, strange, old-fashioned. Every whispered comment in the hallways was like a small, invisible blade. Look what she's wearing. That's just an old grandmother thing. Who still wears clothes like that? And little by little, it began to erode Clara's, making her shrink, make herself smaller, try to disappear into the crowd she didn't understand. But there was something different about her, something no one could immediately see. A quiet strength, a courage that grew slowly, hidden behind eyes that observed, that learned, that absorbed every word, every gesture, every injustice. Clara didn't know it yet, but that dress, handmade with such care, wasn't just a piece of clothing. It was a symbol, an instrument of transformation that one day would make those same runners who judged her today bow before her authenticity and talent. And there was a mystery hanging in the air, a secret no one at school could have imagined. Behind every dot, every carefully aligned line, lay a story waiting to be revealed, a story that could inspire, shock, and surprise everyone. No one suspected that the same girl who endured cruel whispers and disapproving looks would soon be the center of attention, not for what others wanted her to be, but for who she truly was. In Clara's eyes, those dresses were more than just clothes. They were memories. They were her grandmother's voice. They were hope. They were resistance. Every fold of fabric, every seam, carried a silent message. You are valuable, no matter what anyone says. But in the outside world, that simple dress was seen as the target of jokes and scorn, and the girl's heart, though resilient, carried the weight of despair. Yet, deep down, something was beginning to shift. Small signs appeared, curious glances, discreet smiles, unexpected comments from someone who seemed to sense there was more to the story than met the eye. It was the beginning of something no one could have predicted, a silent, almost imperceptible, yet powerful shift. An invisible thread connecting a grandmother's talent to a young woman's future, ready to unfold in surprising ways. And so, amidst the silence and contempt, a story began to unfold. A story of courage, love, injustice, and redemption. A story that began with a dress, but would speak of much more than clothing. It would speak of self-esteem, the courage to be different, the power of those who remain true to themselves even when the whole world tells them otherwise. After all, who could have imagined that what was now a source of ridicule would tomorrow become a source of admiration? That an invisible young woman would become a role model, and a simple handmade dress would become a symbol of resilience, beauty, and authenticity? Something much greater was about to happen, something that would forever change Clara's destiny, and perhaps inspire all who once felt they belonged nowhere. And in that moment, as the girl walked down the school hallway, feeling the weight of laughter and whispers, no one could have imagined that every stitch of the dress she wore held the promise of something extraordinary, a promise that was about to be fulfilled, revealing that true power lies not in following standards, but in honoring what is done with love, dedication, and truth. And it is thus, in this silent mystery, in this almost palpable suspense, that Clara's story begins. A story that no one who watched it from afar could have predicted, but which would soon win hearts, change destinies, and prove that what seems small and insignificant can, in fact, transform the world. This is Clara, 16, a shy girl with curious eyes and a sensitive heart. She wasn't the most popular girl in school or the most outgoing, but there was something that made her special. Her passion for fashion, creativity, and above all, her grandmother's talent. Every piece Clara wore carried not just fabric and thread, but stories of dedication, silent nights of work, smiles, and memories of a grandmother who always believed in the value of effort and love. Every dress, every blouse, every detail was carefully thought out. Every stitch was a declaration of care, a silent way of saying, "You are to be unique, you deserve." But at school, for those who looked only through superficial eyes, none of this mattered. While her grandmother saw beauty, dedication, and history in every stitch, her classmates saw only something different, something that didn't fit the norms dictated by the group. Those clothes, made with such care and creativity, became the target of muffled laughter in the hallways, malicious whispers, and disapproving looks. What was love became a source of ridicule. What was dedication became a source of judgment. Clara, who loved every piece she wore, began to feel the cruel weight of being different. Each day was a new challenge. She tried to blend in, to go unnoticed, but the stares and comments were constant. "Look what she's wearing today. That's just an old grandmother thing. Who still wears clothes like that?" Words that cut silently, that hurt without the need for shouts or screams. The girl, who until then had felt safe within the world she had built with her grandmother, began to question her own worth. Maybe, she thought, it's easier to hide, to follow everyone else's wear, to be like everyone else. But there was something about Clara that no one could see at first glance. A quiet strength, a courage that had not yet revealed itself, hidden behind fear and insecurity. Something that grew with every cruel comment, every judgmental look. Every day the world seemed to tell her that being unique was wrong. Clara didn't know it, but that contempt, that silent defiance was paving the way for something extraordinary, something no one at school could have imagined. And it is in this contrast that the story unfolds, her grandmother's talent and love pitted against the ignorance and judgment of her peers. What was once a source of ridicule, what seemed fragile and small, hid the potential for an unexpected turnaround. Each seam, each hand-stitched piece, carried more than fabric. It carried a promise, a secret, a strength yet to be revealed. And Clara, even without knowing it, was about to discover that what today is a source of pain and shame could, tomorrow, become pride, inspiration, and change. As the girl walked through the hallways, trying to shield herself from the world, no one could have predicted that. Behind every wrinkle in the fabric and every silent smile from her grandmother, something greater was being born. A story about courage, authenticity, and the power of staying true to yourself, even when everything around you seems to say otherwise. And now the question everyone is beginning to ask is, how could something so simple, a handmade dress, change Clara's destiny? What twist is about to happen that will transform what is now a source of pain into something extraordinary? The answer will come soon, and when it does, no one will be able to forget it. The bullying intensified day by day. Each morning felt like a test of Clara's courage. Every school hallway transformed into a minefield of judgmental looks and malicious whispers. Tacky? Weird? Look at how she dresses. The words were thrown like invisible stones, silent yet capable of cutting deeply. There were no punches, no shouts, but the impact was real, concrete, crushing. Clara felt tiny in the face of so much indifference and contempt. She loved her grandmother's handmade clothes. Every detail, every stitch, every fabric choice held a special meaning, but no one seemed to see it. To her classmates, it was simply too different, old-fashioned, too strange. There were days when Clara tried to ignore the laughter, the whispers, the disapproving looks. She tried to hide in the back of the classroom, immerse herself in her books, and walk briskly through the hallways, but the silent hostility persisted like a shadow that wouldn't leave her. Until one day, a teacher noticed the pain in the girl's eyes and intervened, calling attention to the unfair behavior of some students. For a brief moment, it seemed the tide was turning, but the shift was only momentary. In the hallways, among her peer groups, in the quiet corners of the school, the bullying continued, stealthy, constant. And then, something inside Clara began to shift. A silent feeling, a spark of courage that had long been dormant. She realized she could continue hiding, trying to please and fit in, but that would never reveal who she truly was. And in that moment, she decided it was time to turn things around. She decided that no one, not even looks or cruel words, could erase the love she felt for her grandmother and for what she had created with such care. But what Clara did was unexpected. Instead of withdrawing, of shrinking, she decided to share her truth. She began to show the world behind each piece, the story each stitch held, the love each seam held. She posted photos and wrote short texts explaining the meaning of each detail, the days and nights her grandmother had dedicated to each creation. It was more than just. It was a message of courage, dedication, and authenticity. And little by little, the world began to notice. First, there were a few quiet comments, words of encouragement from people who had never crossed her path at school. Then came likes, shares, and small compliments that began to multiply. Each gesture of recognition seemed to restore some of the strength that bullying had tried to steal. What had once been a source of ridicule began to transform into silent admiration. What no one could have predicted was that this small, seemingly simple action would be the beginning of something much bigger. Every photo shared, every word about her grandmother's love and dedication had the power to change not only Clara's perception, but the perception of everyone around her. The world was about to see that what seemed strange, old-fashioned, or tacky could, in fact, be extraordinary. And so, in that moment of quiet courage, Clara began to write her own destiny. A destiny that, until then, had seemed merely a series of difficult days and cruel whispers, but which now began to transform into inspiration, recognition, and change. The question hanging in the air was clear. How far could this courage take her? What impact would the strength of a young woman determined to speak her truth have? What's about to happen will change not only Clara's life, but the way everyone sees what it means to be authentic, to be true to oneself, and to transform pain into opportunity. This transformation finally unfolds. No one will be able to say that Handmade dress didn't have the power to change everything. Suddenly, everything began to change. What had once been a source of laughter in the school hallways, disapproving looks and malicious whispers, began to take on new meaning. A simple click, a photo shared with the world, transformed into something bigger than Clara could ever imagine. An influencer known for valuing creativity and authenticity noticed those images, full of history and feeling. Without realizing it, he gave Clara something no one at school had ever achieved: attention, recognition, and respect. Within days, the unexpected happened. The handmade clothes, previously the target of ridicule and criticism, began to attract the attention of thousands of people. Comments praising every detail, every stitch made with so much love and dedication, began to appear. People who would never have met Clara in real life began to see the value of what had previously been invisible. Grandma's talent, the silent love that permeated every stitch, finally found the light it deserved. And in the midst of this transformation, something happened to Clara too. She began to realize that all the pain, suffering, and injustice she had faced until then were not in vain. Every cruel laugh, every scornful look, every unkind word had been just an obstacle on the path to something greater. The shy girl who walked the halls trying to hide began to hold her head high with pride. She finally understood that her worth didn't depend on the approval of her peers, but on the courage to show her truth. The world, which had previously seemed cold and indifferent, began to open up to her. Invitations to events, messages from young people inspired by her story, requests for interviews, all added up to prove that authenticity is often more powerful than conformity. That quiet courage, born of love for her grandmother and her talent for creating something unique, began to generate ripples of impact that transcended the confines of her school and her city, reaching people in places Clara never imagined. But the transformation wasn't just external. Clara began to feel a profound shift within herself. Insecurity gave way to confidence. Fear transformed into courage. And for the first time, she realized she could be the protagonist of her own story. What had once been a source of shame now became a symbol of strength and inspiration. Every stitch of the dress, every detail carefully thought out by her grandmother, carried not only beauty but meaning, proof that love, dedication, and authenticity can overcome prejudice and transform lives. And it's at this point that the story becomes even more powerful. The world not only recognized Clara's talent, but also began to realize something bigger, that what's different, what's unique, what's done with heart, can change the way we all look at beauty, fashion, and even life itself. That girl
Once
who
called
was weird now inspired others to accept themselves, to value themselves, and to believe that difference is often the greatest strength anyone can have. But the best was yet to come. Clara's story was about to reach a turning point no one could have predicted. A turning point that would demonstrate not only the power of talent, but the strength of those who have the courage to be true to themselves, even when everything and everyone tells them otherwise. And when that moment arrived, it would be impossible not to be moved, inspired, and ask yourself, what if you had the same courage? What could you transform in your own life? Suddenly, everything began to change unexpectedly. What had once been a source of laughter in the school hallways, disapproving looks, and cruel whispers began to take on new meaning. A simple click, a carefully shared photo, transformed into something bigger than Clara could ever have imagined. A digital influencer known for valuing creativity and authenticity noticed those images and, without realizing it, sparked a wave of attention that would completely change the course of the young woman's life. Within days, the impact was visible. The handmade clothes, once the subject of jokes and judgment, began to garner praise from people everywhere, young and old alike, who saw the value in every stitch and detail. Comments poured in every minute. What incredible talent! This is unique. The dedication behind each piece is inspiring. What had previously been contempt began to turn to admiration, and Clara, who had previously hidden away, began to feel something new. Recognition and validation for what had always been important to her and her grandmother. But the transformation wasn't just external. Little by little, Clara began to realize something even deeper. All the pain she had felt, every moment she felt small or inadequate, was now transformed into strength. The girl who once cowered under critical gazes began to hold her head high, walk with more confidence, and realize that true importance lay not in the opinions of others, but in the courage to be true to herself. Every dress, every blouse, every handmade piece ceased to be just clothing and became a symbol of resilience, authenticity, and courage. And it was at this moment that Clara's story began to inspire others. People who had also felt different, who had suffered judgment and exclusion, began to find in her journey a reflection of their own struggle. Suddenly, the courage of a shy young girl and the quiet talent of her grandmother became a beacon, showing that it is possible to transform pain into opportunity, rejection into recognition, and that authenticity has the power to overcome prejudice and expectations. But what makes this story even more fascinating is that this is only the beginning. The world was starting to pay attention, but Clara still had no idea what was about to happen. What seemed like a small personal victory had the potential to become something bigger, capable of changing not only her life, but also the perception of everyone around her. This girl who had suffered so much was about to experience a turning point no one could have foreseen, a moment that would reveal that sometimes one's greatest strength lies in accepting who one truly is, even when everyone else tells her otherwise. And it's in this quiet suspense, in this growing anticipation, that the audience connects. What will happen to Clara now? How far will the courage to show her truth take her? How can her grandmother's talent, previously ignored, change the destiny of a young woman who has learned to no longer hide? What once seemed improbable is about to become extraordinary. And when this transformation happens, It will be impossible not to be moved, inspired, and reflect on the power of authenticity in one's own life. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: what others call strange, outdated, or inappropriate can actually become extraordinary when seen with love, dedication, and authenticity. Clara, that shy girl who walked the school hallways with her head down, learned in a profound and transformative way that a person's true value lies not in what they wear, how others see them, or in the standards imposed by a group, but in the courage to remain true to themselves, in the determination to honor what they carry in their heart, and in the way they choose to express their inner world. Each handmade dress, each detail carefully planned by her grandmother, once a source of ridicule and laughter, became a symbol of resilience and genuine beauty, not just for its aesthetics or craftsmanship, but for the love each stitch carried, the care, the dedication, and the story it told. Clara learned that true love isn't silent. It manifests itself in small actions and daily choices, and that what seems insignificant to some can actually have the power to touch lives in unexpected ways. The same classmates who once mocked, laughed, and pointed fingers slowly began to realize something was changing. That girl who seemed fragile and lonely began to inspire quiet admiration, curiosity, and respect. Every post, every shared photo, every story told about her grandmother's love, and the meaning of each piece transformed the perception of everyone around her. What was once strange became desired. What was ignored became admired. What was once a reason for exclusion became synonymous with authenticity and originality. Clara learned that life isn't about pleasing others, but about expressing herself fully, about honoring what's most true and special about herself. She realized that those who criticize often see only the superficial, that other people's judgment is a reflection of the observer's own insecurities and limitations. But the impact of her choices and her courage wasn't limited to recognition from school or social media. Clara's strength began to touch people from faraway places, people she would never meet in person, but who found inspiration in her story to fight for their own authenticity, to value what's unique about them, and to understand that every detail, every gesture made with love has transformative power. And in the end, those who once laughed now applaud not for what she wears, but for what she represents. She represents courage, love, dedication, authenticity, and resilience. She represents the certainty that it is possible to transform pain into opportunity, into recognition, and difference into strength. She represents that each person has within them the potential to change not only their own life, but the lives of those around them when they choose to be true to themselves and honor what they carry in their heart. Clara's story isn't just about clothes or fashion. It's about life, about the courage to be who you are, even when the world seems to say otherwise. It's about how small, seemingly simple gestures can become powerful catalysts for transformation. Every line, every stitch, every detail made with love, dedication, and patience has the potential to inspire, teach, and move. Clara discovered that someone's worth isn't measured by the approval of others, but by the positive impact their authenticity can generate. And this lesson goes beyond the context of a school or a clothing brand. It's universal. We all face moments when we feel judged, misunderstood, or undervalued. We all have that talents, can be ignored and criticized by those who can't see beyond the surface. But true transformation happens when we decide to trust ourselves, when we choose to show our truth, when we honor what we love and put dedication into every gesture. What seems strange or small to some can, with love and courage, become something extraordinary, capable of generating lasting impact and inspiring others. Clara also learned about the strength of family relationships. Her grandmother's silent support, dedication, and unconditional love conveyed through each piece of clothing were what gave her the courage to face the world. This reminds us that often the inspiration and strength we need are close to us, in gestures of care, words of encouragement, or silent examples of dedication. Recognizing, valuing, and learning from these people is a fundamental step toward discovering one's own potential. And this is where the story connects directly with each of us. How many times do we fail to show who we truly are for fear of others' judgment? How many times do we hide our talents, passions, or opinions because we think they won't be valued? Clara teaches us that every act of authenticity has a multiplier effect, that the courage to be true not only transforms us, but also transforms the world around us. The power of this story lies in its ability to make us reflect. What if we too had the courage to show our truth? What if we transformed our difficulties, our hidden talents, and differences into something that could inspire others? Clara reminds us that transformation begins from the inside out. Past pain, fear of judgment, and obstacles faced can be catalysts for growth and success when we choose to act with courage, love, and dedication. Therefore, the message is clear. Never underestimate the value of what you do with love and dedication. What the world might call strange or outdated can actually become a source of inspiration, respect, seems small or insignificant to some, when done with authenticity, has the power to touch hearts and change destinies. Clara shows us that true recognition doesn't come from everyone's approval, but from the courage to be true to yourself and transform love and talent into concrete action. Now we want to hear from you. Have you ever felt judged or misunderstood for something you love? Have you ever hidden your talent or passion for fear of what others would think? Share your story in the comments. Every shared experience can inspire someone to have the courage to show their truth. If this story touched you, don't forget to leave your Lakato support more exciting content like this, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories of overcoming authenticity and inspiration. Together, we can celebrate the courage to be who we truly are